Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations. Thanks for tuning in today. We're talking signs and we're moving up into the holiday season, and Christmas is a great time for signs. People like decorating with signage hanging on the walls, from sitting up on shelves or on their bookcases, on their buffets, on their sideboards. And they sell well for people with small booths or weekend markets and bazaars and things like that. However, you don't want to store them from year to year, so you want to sell them at a price point that people are going to be able to just pick them up on a whim, be able to give them as gifts, whatever. So you need to start with inexpensive bases, and wood is a really high-priced item. And I do get asked by people for solutions other than pallet wood because it's not necessarily accessible to everyone. It requires you to take the pallet apart, which is a bit of a pain. And to be able to cut the boards down to size. And I get that not everybody has power tools available, or, a husband or a child to be able to, because my kids are old, be able to say, hey, break that down for me, take care of that. So I wanted to give you a lot of solutions for things that I do here in the shop and things that I look for to be able to turn into quick, inexpensive signs. And let's face it, if you're breaking down a pallet board, then that's your time that you are not making things to be able to sell wherever you happen to do that. So that time also gets factored in because you're not making, right? You're taking apart the wood and you're cutting the wood down. So where do you get ready-made signs? So obviously, one of the things to look for are items in dollar stores, right? So these small little thin craft discs. And I had picked up the wood ones from the dollar store. I can't remember. Wait, it says on it, I think this is $4 from Dollarama. So $4 for 6 of these. And these are perfect for Christmas because they're already wreath shaped. So doing a wreath design, whether you're hand painting it, you're stenciling it, JRV has perfect stencils this size. There are transfers from IOD. You want to keep the base as inexpensive as possible to give you as many options. So dollar store, they have these in different shapes as well. So that's a great option. Additionally, take a look at your thrift stores. So for instance, I got 6 of these placemats with the felt backing for $2.99. And these ones I'm going to be using in a project with you. I got 12 of them for $7.99. These ones are slightly bigger. And then you can also get them in the full dinner size, right? So these end up being great options for signs as well. Similarly, when you're thrifting, look for cutting boards. Right? Turning a cutting board into a sign. I just recently did a big kind of pizza board into some Christmas decor. These are great because they're nice, they're thick, they're solid. So much flexibility with these for any season. So I almost never turn down a cutting board. And you'll be able to get them in rounds and ovals. And in most thrift stores, they are a reasonable price. And I say that just because all of a sudden, some thrift stores have gone crazy with pricing because people have been looking for items. One of the items that for whatever reason a lot of people do not pick up and that I find in thrift stores all the time are these grilling planks, these cedar grilling planks. But think about this, they're fairly thick, they are lightweight, so no problem with hanging them. They've got curved edges a lot of times, and look at the size of that. That's perfect for signage. So this batch I got for $3.99 from the thrift store, and there are 7 planks in there. This one I picked up for $4.99. There's one little plank missing. So this has 5 full-size boards, and it had 4, but now 3 half-size boards. So I've got some flexibility on the sizing without having to cut anything and to saw anything down. So these I pick up whenever I see them, and I just store them until I need to be doing some signs, right? So just keep that in mind. If you know that you're gonna be doing some signs, that you're gonna be looking to do, and let's face it, I mean, you can do these for any season. You do some, you know, hello spring signs, you do some little Easter ones, maybe do 1 or 2, you know, couple for your booth for Valentine's, coming up with pumpkins and, you know, getting ready for Thanksgiving. Signs are always an element that you can easily put into your booth, into, you know, any market that you're doing. And they're really pretty easy to store because they're flat. You know, so if you're not, you know, gluing on or attaching on all kinds of ribbons and other decor, they are easily put aside for the following season. And if you store them well, they don't need much work. So to do this, what I do before I kind of start doing any of my planning as to what sign I want to do is I start with a base coat. Now, usually for a lot of my signs, I layer the colors. So I will start with typically black, and then I might start adding some other colors to it. So let's do, and you'll see these ones say cedar, and they have, you know, soaking instructions for them. I don't care. Especially if I'm decoupaging over that, it's not a big deal if I am putting paint over top of it. But usually what I do is I give it a quick sand with my sander just so that it's not as embedded. But I'm gonna be putting 1, 2, at least 3 coats of paint on this. So really, we're not gonna see that anyway. And then that's where I'm gonna be doing my stenciling, doing my thing. So I'm going to get all of these painted black as just a base, and then I'll come back at you. We'll talk about how I start layering up some of my colors, and then we'll get to the good stuff, which is signs. Yeah. Because I am planning on doing my boards for Christmas signs, I want to do an additional color. So have a little bit more color in there for distressing. Otherwise, if I was just doing a farmhouse sign, I would just go straight on with the white. So what I want is to create some resist so that the black will show readily. So I'm gonna do some candle wax, and this is just a cheap candle from the dollar store that I use just for this. And I'm going around the edges first, because I definitely want that black edging to show. And then I'm gonna take some of my candle wax, and I'm just gonna kind of roughly put it into kind of the corners, get a little bit more border showing here and there. And I'm gonna do this to each of my boards. And then, so this was Little Black Dress from DIY. And then I am going to add an additional color, and I'm either going to add on Monet's Garden, which is kind of a nice Christmassy green, or I'm gonna add Carnival Red. So I'm gonna coat the whole board in one of those colors, let it dry, and then I'm going to do my wax resist again. But because I'm gonna do all the boards kind of the same, you can see where I put the wax, then when I go to do wax on the next coat, so after I've done the green or the red, I am going to add wax kind of a little bit more inside those areas. So I'll do the corners again, but I'll do it maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. And then I'm gonna paint everything white. All right? So you can kind of see me wax once. You don't need to see me do it again. But just so you understand the process, that now we're gonna do our color, red or green, let it dry, we're gonna do the wax. I'm gonna take it just a little bit further in the edges so that when I go to distress back the white, and I'll bring you back for that, then I'll maybe get that double color. I wanna have the black edging, a little bit of red or green, and then the white in the center for my signs. With me? Okay, I'm going to go and wax everything up and then paint them all out again, and then I'll be back. Now that my boards are all dry, it is time to distress them, and we're gonna do this a little bit differently. I could use sandpaper, but I want them to have a little bit more of a chippy look as opposed to like a really smooth edged look. So this is what the board looks like. This is the look that we're after, right? So it's got that rough edge. This one has the black and the green peeking through. We're getting both of those colors. So the way to do this, because we've got that wax under it, is that I am taking this happens to be the Cricut little scraper tool to get your stickers off and stuff. An old credit card works. You could use the little stick from your IOD stuff. And all that we're doing is we're kind of running it over the edges where, oh, and this one's got red. So I'm just running it over those edges. So you can see it comes out in big chips. So it's got more of a rough hewn, kind of worn look, which is just a lot more different. It's just different from what the look would be from sanding. So they look a little bit more weathered, a little bit more worn. That's what I'm after with this. And you can see where I've got black and I've got red showing through. And then I actually scrape down the full body. Now I don't have any wax on this part, so all I'm doing is I'm using the scraper just to kind of smooth that out. So because I'm going to be transferring, stenciling, inlaying, I mean whatever the heck I'm going to be doing. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to get all of these boards prepped first. I'm not sealing anything, but I am going to get them. Oh, that was a good chip there. Okay, but I am going to get them all chippy before we start. So because there's no wax here, it's not going to chip off. It's just going to be chipping where I had put the wax all around the edges, get that rough look on all of the boards, and then we'll come back and we'll start doing our designs in the center of them. And because I missed somehow recording, you're getting where I thought that I'd stop the recording. But the process is the same. What I am doing is on those 4 square tiles, which were the placemats, the small luncheon size placemats, I am adding big tops. So I'm putting on a liquid top coat. You can do one of your choice, but I'm doing that because I am adding an inlay. And this is the paint inlay likes to go into something wet. I could do it either into wet paint or into the wet surface of my top coat. I am using a scraper tool just to be able to push and flatten all of that down into the top coat so that it's all sealed nicely, it's nice and straight, and then spritz it. So we're not spraying it soaking wet, but we're just spritzing it lightly, and then I like to press the painted part of the inlay back down further. What that spritz is doing is activating the paint so that it's now going to release into my top coat. We're going to set it aside to dry, and once dry, we'll repeat that process. Our little round one. For this, I do have a little wreath. And I've just been kind of debating in terms of placement. If I put it a little bit lower, did I want to put some words up above for the sign? And I'm thinking, yes, I'm thinking maybe. So just always one of the things to consider, whether it's going to be just a sign on its own. And I you could cut it so that the bird's not in there, and I quite like that red kind of cardinal in there, just that pop. And I have a red base underneath the white in this one deliberately to offset it. So for this one, what I will be looking at doing is either maybe stamping on or stenciling on some letters. So we'll get this on first. And I kind of like, you know, if you're doing things like this, if you're doing signs like this for shows, then I like to get all of my boards painted all at once, because then they're all drying, I'm waiting on the same thing. I get all the paints out for the same, and it just makes it go faster, because then I'm looking at doing a number of them, and I want to have kind of almost like a production line. It's going to be a more effective use of your time than if you're getting paints out, finishing off one sign and then putting them all away, and then getting out transfers and then doing some transfers and then maybe getting your paints out again. And so what I like to do is consider each of my signs, and then when I go to stencil or do something that I need the paint for, then I do it to all of them all at once. So this one is like this. And what I'm thinking is putting wording across here, like peace, right? So that one is done for now, because I still have my 3 rectangular ones to take a look at. And for these, I have been thinking that I want to do some stenciling. And in particular, I have one that says Merry Christmas on it. I have the Jamie Ray. You know, for this too, if you don't have the transfer, this is the little pack of the Jamie Ray Vintage wreaths, but there is a bigger pack, which I think there's 4 in there, and they would be perfect on here. So you could just stencil a wreath on, no problem. I'm just looking at some of these and deciding what I want to do. Now, I'm thinking if I did Merry Christmas off to the side here, let me just open this baby up. For the lettering, did that over there. Then I could do some other decorations, and I might be able to do some of the bottle brush trees, which I really quite love. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so I'm going to take my piece of paper from the back of my transfer, and I'm going to use it to offload my stencil brush. So I have a little 1/2-inch JRV stencil brush available along with the paints I'm using and the transfers and inlays and all that kind of stuff on the website, Queen Bee Creations Home. And I am offloading it. So I'm putting some here, and then I'm smearing it off to the side so that I don't have tons on my brush. And I am now going to kind of pounce in my lettering. You don't want to have too much paint on your brush, because you know, the wetter it is, the more paint that you've got, the more likely it's going to bleed under your stenciling, and you're not going to have nice crisp images. So nice and crisp images. Now what I'm thinking that I'd like, put the lid back on you, are a couple of these bottle brush trees from JRB. Just seeing if I could fit 3 on there. Maybe if they're the skinnier ones. All right, so what I'm going to do is take my Monet's Garden and another stencil brush, and I'm going to do exactly the same process. And there we go. Now the one thing, you know, each of the bottle brush trees actually has a base. And if you notice, my trees don't have one. I just elected to not use that, so I actually covered it with my finger. That's why my fingers are all painted green now. And I just didn't include it. So the Merry Christmas has this great big swag of kind of holly and berries. I don't want to have that huge thing. I do want to have some berries. So I'm going to take my Carnival Red. I'm going to do the same thing, just offload a little bit. I'm going to do the 3 berries. And I just wanted to have a touch of red on here because of the red border, right? So there's my 3 berries. Now, there are a couple of leaves that are separate from and not attached to the great big stem. So those are the ones I'm going to want to use. I'm just going to have to position my stencil in a way that I'm using my finger to mask off, and I'm being careful trying not to get the other parts of the stencil that I don't want stenciled, so that I end up with a couple of single leaves. So I'm going to do 2 on either side, and then we're good with this one. Now I still have some of the transfers from the old IOD Christmas for the past 2 years actually, and this one came from the little book from last year that I still had some that I ended up actually selling at the beginning of this season. So there was maybe about half a dozen lucky people that managed to snag a couple of these. So I am going to do a tall Santa. So I'm going to do a tall sign. Now, my Merry and my Christmas don't fit as they are. The Christmas is too wide for my board, but not if I readjust. So, you know, don't feel like you are locked into only one way of this, right? That you get to piece these however it makes sense for you. So I'm going to need the Merry down before I could add the Christmas on there, just so that I can fit the Christmas up into it. Now, the other thing is, I haven't sealed any of these boards. I am applying these transfers directly onto the dry paint. So I don't want you to think that you can't. The difference is if you try and attach the transfers when the paint is still, I'm gonna say wet, but it could be kind of dry to the touch. But if it feels cold to you, then that means that the paint is not dry enough for the transfers to adhere. So I would really strongly urge you to have left them kind of overnight, right? So I'm actually going to have the M come down into my C so that I'm not taking it up too high. Okay, and now I think it needs a little bit of greenery. So I'm just taking some holly from, again, one of the transfers, and I'm cutting it apart so that I have smaller sprigs. And I want you to feel comfortable in just doing that, cutting any of the transfers apart. You can layer them on top of each other, right? You can add them in whatever way makes sense to you. You're not locked into just any one way. Okay, little guy, little sprig coming off at the top there. I need to cover, I need something in all this white space here. So let's have that sprig coming down there. And maybe this one coming up here too. Okay. Now, when it comes to the inlays, I just want to pop back over here and then we'll go back to our other project. We aren't necessarily waiting for the top coat to be fully dry. It's still got a little bit of a slight tack to it. We are going to spritz these again so you can see that the letter is fairly faint, and that when we start to wet this again, it starts to deepen in color. And that's what we want to see, right? We want to see that we are softening up that paper. And remember, when I'm pulling this, I want to be careful because I can use these letters again. They get more faded each time for subsequent use, but technically I'll get maybe about, three uses out of them. So I do want to get this not quite wet enough over on that corner. Softened up, let it sit for about 30 seconds, and then we want to slowly remove this paper. Now the idea here for me is I want this to dry, and then I'm thinking I'm gonna add some transfers with the inlays. So you can mix these, right? You can mix and match these. So don't think that you are limited to just inlays or just the transfers. Now, I'm getting a little more distressing from this happening as well, which I don't mind because I was using, so I'm just laying this on the floor now so that it can dry. And I'm gonna go get my other letters done. And then I'm gonna get this to dry fully. And then we can look at adding on, but I can't add transfers to that until it's completely dry. Okay, so let's jump back to this little guy. I got some of my letter stamps out, and I'm using the lowercase letters so that I can spell out peace. The A is my middle letter. And I'm just grabbing a, there we go. My letters aren't very sticky, so I'm just gonna kind of clean them as I go. But because I happen to have a 5-letter word, I am going to line up the A in the middle where I want it to go. And then that way, I can line up my other letters going around it. Now, I need 2 E's. I only have 1. So I'm going to line up all 4 of these letters right along here, and then I will come back in with my other E afterward. So what I am looking for is where I put the one other little, well, I'll do this, okay. So this, by the way, you can use like the clear sheets that come in between your letter templates. You could use the sheets that you purchase. I took a piece of, okay, what's this plastic called? You buy it in a big sheet, you could use it instead of windows, whatever that's called. I can't remember. It's just gone from my head right now. But I drew lines on it. I just had my husband cut it out, and then I glued old knobs onto it so that I create all kinds of different sizes. Oh, right in front of me. I have a little one. So I created all kinds of different sized little pieces that I could use as a template to be able to pick up my stamps. Now I'm using stone gray for this in the IOD inks, and I just want to ink up my letters, and I'm thinking I'm gonna go get black. All right, so I just want to make sure. Well, you shifted. You were okay. Just want to make sure that my A is still lined up. And there we go. So all I need to do is take my little E and ink it up again. And stamp it into place. Because I'm just doing the one, I'm gonna just eyeball it on my own. And there we go. I have the whole Noel sign laid out in front of me just so that I can kind of plan the look and the layout together. So what I do have are some transfers from various little Christmas patterns, and I just wanted to decorate each of these up a little. And I figured it would be easier to do it in a way that made sense if I actually had them laid out at where I could see them all at the same time, right? So I'm thinking I just need to add a little bit of greenery to these, you know, some little holly and berries, and just kind of zhuzh them up a little bit. So I'm going to kind of cut apart some of my transfers, see where they might look good, and add those on, and we'll kind of go from there. Just seeing where I can cut these apart easily so that they look great. Okay, I'm just gonna keep cutting and laying out and attaching transfers. For my Noel sign, I am going to hang my letters on a long ribbon. Now this is a pretty heavy duty velvet ribbon with gold trim. You don't want to use something that's too lightweight because you're going to be hanging those letters on it. So the first thing that I want to do is I do want to just fold over a little bit of a tab just to give it something to hang from. You know, you can add a hook later, you could add a bar through the tab, you know, whatever's gonna work for you. So give it enough space that you can do that. All right, so this way, I've got this through it. Oh, hot glue still. I've got that through it, that I could put a bar, that I could put a hook, I could do whatever I need to. Don't put your finger through it. Or at least wait till your glue is cold. Okay, and then I want to add my letters in order, but I'm leaving space because I want to add a bow. Now, I took that same ribbon and all I did was I crisscrossed it, did a piece of wire in the middle, and I added on just this little pick and a couple of little gold bells because I had the gold trim. This is going to get glued just kind of below where that hanger is. So I want to leave enough space for this. Well, I guess I could just glue it right now and let it harden. And I'm adding a fair bit, as you can see, a bit of a glob. And then pushing that to make sure that it holds. When it comes to the letters, all that I want to do is make sure that they are evenly spaced, right? That when they're lined up, that they're not super wonky sideways, and that they've got kind of roughly the same distance going down. So I don't have to worry about the first one from the top. I mean, so you can see I did the greenery and different in all spaces. These look nice and old and worn, which is perfect. That's what I was after. You can make yours look more pristine. And what I'm looking to do is I am simply taking markers to highlight where the stop and start is of my N. So if I'm putting it on my ribbon there, then I know when I go to add my glue right now, I don't want to go higher than that top one, and I don't want to go lower than my gold one. It just makes my life easier, and then that way I don't have to actually get out a measuring something. It tells me where I'm going to stop and start, and I just want to press down in the middle. And then what I will do is I will probably take this, use that as the measure between both of my letters so that I can do that consistently all the way down. I might do something a little bit less than that. I'm not sure how much space I left between them, actually. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing for the next one. Take this up just a little bit higher. And I'm now going to look for something that is that width so that I know, okay, I have it one stump away. All right. And I'm just going to do exactly the same thing. And I'll leave this to dry. And these guys are finished. Before I show you the finished signs, I just wanted to kind of chat briefly about why we were doing this. It's really from the standpoint of signs are, you know, in your booths and your marketplaces are really kind of a quick, inexpensive way to put things up on your walls, put things up on your shelves, have fairly low priced items for people to be able to buy. I mean, you want to have a variety of things, but I'd rather have people leave buying something than having bought nothing. So look for inexpensive options in dollar stores when you're thrifting for things to be able to use as the base for various signs. And I deliberately chose not to use anything that required any kind of power tools. So I didn't have to cut down boards. I didn't have to pry boards off of things. So if you're somebody that you don't have access to those tools, you don't have somebody that's going to cut them up for you if you didn't want to do it yourself, then these are the options for you to be able to look for. Cutting boards are awesome. You know, dollar store boards, they come, you know, even if they're, you know, the leftover ones from Easter that you're using for Christmas. I mean, buy them when they're cheap, when they're inexpensive. So this is just using some of the IOD transfers, some of the stamps. And while I'm talking about transfers, I get people that say, well, I can't afford to use the transfers or the inlays. Maybe and then be able to sell them. The best way, because people don't know how to price it, so think in terms of how many sheets of the transfer. Let's just pretend we're only talking transfers here. So how many sheets of the transfer did you get in a pack? Was it a 4-pack? Was it an 8-pack? And therefore divide your cost by that number of sheets. So now you know what your cost per sheet is. So if your sign used 1 full page of your transfer, then you know what that cost is, and you can factor that in with whatever your base was in your paint. I also take a look at, was it, so that's if it was 1/8 of the pack. If it's 8 in the pack, then that's 1/8 of the total price. Is it, so that's my price per page. What's my price for a 1/2 page or a 1/4 page or an 1/8 of a page? I don't go any lower than that. So I just kind of roughly know what my pricing is based on that, and you can factor it in. Don't try and break it down any finer than that. You're just looking for something rough. So something that's just as basic and as cute as this. Now you could also dress this up, as I said, by adding ribbons, bows, anything that you want. You could glue any kind of trim around the edge if you want to. Add to the time it takes you, add to the expense of it. I would probably just attach some kind of a ribbon or like a red rope to it so it can just hang. We did boards, which were just the cedar planks for your barbecue, for doing, planked salmon, or I've done planked meatloaf, so that you soak them, you use them on your barbecue, but they're really inexpensive. A lot of people get them as gifts and then don't know what to do with them with their barbecues, so they give them away. You can get those packs really pretty inexpensively in the dollar store, and we did some, this one was all transfers, and we did it upright this way. This one was a combination of transfer and stencil, so Joyeux Noël, because hey, I'm in Canada. It's very fitting. This one was just all stencils, right? So you can mix. You could do all stencils, you could do all stamps, you could do stamps and stencils, you could do transfers and stamps and stencils. I mean, whatever works for you. This one, our big Noel sign, was using the small little place cards. We used the inlay and then we added transfers to the inlay afterwards. So we've put our big Noel sign on a big ribbon, and we have that full one, which would look great on a front door. It would look great down a panel beside a door, or just on your wall somewhere in your house. But again, this is really inexpensive because these were just the thrifted placemats, right? That were just the perfect size for those letters. And I made mine look nice and distressed, which I think is a great contrast with the velvet ribbon. You do you. I just more wanted to give you some ideas of things that you could do really quickly to be able to balance out items that you might have for sale, items that were going to be inexpensive, and setting up a production line. If you do a lot of the same signs, then don't put them all out on your table. You want to have the variety of signage, and then after somebody has bought one and they walk away, you could pull out the duplicate. Now it's all fresh on your table. But people are less likely to buy from your booth when you have 10 of exactly the same item. Make them different colors, make them say some different things if you're using the same images, and kind of go that way. Hope this was helpful to you. I hope it gave you some good information. Hit me up with questions if I just raised more questions than I answered. Always willing to chime in, and certainly share your thoughts, your opinions for others that are looking to put some items together for markets, and how you think signs sell for you. Love to hear from you as well. As always, thank you for tuning in. Check out queenbeecreationshome.com, and don't forget to check me out next time. Until then, take care.